Hello, you're watching TVP World Talks. I'm Ján Michalčák. With the Ankara summit completed and NATO unity mostly intact, attention of European countries is turning towards Russia. Vague warning signs are circulating about Moscow's possible moves, including escalatory actions designed to break Europe's lifeline for war-torn Ukraine. But what kind of threat could realistically emerge from the east? Is Europe ready for the dirty tricks Putin's weakened military might still have up its sleeve? As EU defense policy chiefs hold high-level talks in Dublin, we're joined by Ján Michalčák, former head of Unit for Countering Hybrid Threats in the Czech Defense Ministry, to talk about what could happen next. Hello and welcome to TVP World.
Good morning from Prague.
Thanks for joining us here today. So let's talk about these potential hybrid threats, shall we? From the signals that we have received so far through the media, what do you make of it? What do you think Russia could be planning?
Of course, the potential threats have been discussed in the media. We have seen indications on the ground for years now, and it is clear that Russia is now largely built, especially its economy, on escalatory tensions, not only with Ukraine, but also with the EU and NATO. We have every indication to believe that basically the only way the Russian regime and the country as such can keep functioning, and if I exaggerate a bit, can survive, is if it sustains its military actions, live military actions against Ukraine, plus if it keeps on the aggressive rhetoric and maybe even some aggressive actions toward the rest of the Western world, so to speak. And we don't have to be looking for examples of Russian actions against the EU and NATO for long. We have seen cargo planes exploding, fortunately not mid-air, so fortunately not killing anyone. Yet, I have to say, we have seen military ammunition depots exploding as a direct result of sabotage by Russian agents, etc., etc. So Russia has already started its campaign against the EU and NATO, not in a hot war phase yet, but we cannot exclude the option, unfortunately, that those actions will continue and will be getting more and more aggressive over time. Now, I'm not saying that Russia is planning to start an open war against the West. I think Putin and his hands are tied in Ukraine, and he's facing increasing issues on that battlefront now. But there are speculations, and I have to emphasize, it is speculations for now, that basically for Putin himself and his regime to keep going, he will have to get more aggressive over time in order to show the Russian public at home that his war efforts are ongoing. And we cannot forget that the Russian economy is now built on the war efforts, and so many people, many livelihoods, and many companies are existentially dependent on the Russian economy, the Russian state, spending a lot of money, a lot of resources on being aggressive.
Right, so this is Ukraine, right? In Ukraine, Russia is thinking about escalating, possibly mobilizing its population for the war effort, which might prove unpopular, by the way. But we've been talking about the possible hybrid threat. Now, if Russia conducts some sort of covert operation against the West, it is based on plausible deniability. So essentially, for Putin, there is nothing to show at home, because he will not admit that it was him, that it was Russia. What sort of endgame is Russia aiming for here? Some have suggested it could be about essentially persuading Western countries not to help Ukraine, diminishing the overall support for Ukraine. What kind of hybrid actions could help Russia achieve that objective?
Exactly. You're completely right. We have to realize that hybrid actions are basically the first phase of any more aggressive actions against any opponent we can think of. So, in this case, the Western world, so to speak. And as you exactly pointed out, the main aim of the Russian regime is to sow distrust, sow chaos in the Western structures, and basically diminish the importance, the cohesion, and the trust in our democratic institutions, and, for example, even trust in our military and in the capabilities of the EU and NATO to defend its own territory and allies. So that's the first and very important step of any hybrid campaign. And of course, as you pointed out, the aim of Putin now is not to be able to show at home, look, this is a specific hybrid action that we've done in the West. Of course, he is going to be denying it as of now, but it gives him the necessary base for the future if he decides to escalate, to be able to do it more easily. Because if his hybrid actions in the first phase, so to speak, if they succeed, he will then have more of a playing field to use in the more hot phase of a potential escalation campaign in
So
the
what
future.
could be this hot phase? That's the question, right? Can you imagine Russia, for example, organizing a terrorist attack with casualties and trying to put the blame on the Ukrainians? For example, counting on our political differences within one particular NATO country where this attack would happen, and basically sowing distrust, like you said, by creating this sort of hostile environment.
Unfortunately, we don't have to even speculate because things like that have already happened, and they have happened. For example, in the country where where I'm now based, in the Czech Republic, back in 2014, there were massive explosion in an ammunition depot in the Czech village of Vrbětice, which was an ammunition depot stockpiling ammo intended to go to Ukraine, because we have to remember that the Russian campaign and the Russian war against Ukraine didn't start in 2022. It already started back in 2014 with the illegal annexation of Crimea and the war in the Donbass. And that's also the reason why Ukraine started on a much smaller scale, of course, but it started stockpiling ammunition already back then. And what happened was that this ammunition depot in the Czech village of Vrbětice was planning to send a significant amount of ammunition to Ukraine in order for it to be able to prepare to defend itself better in the future. And we see history has proven that this was very reasonable to be preparing for a large-scale invasion. And what happened in that attack was that the ammunition depot exploded and 2 Czech citizens died in the attack. Now, of course, Russia is denying the attack, but Czech intelligence services and Czech authorities have even identified the 2 specific people responsible for the attack. We know their identities, we know their real names, and we know exactly what and when they were doing on Czech territory. And we know for a fact, basically, if I put it simply, that Russia has killed 2 citizens of an EU and NATO country already. And incidentally, those 2 agents of the Russian GRU were the exact same people who were responsible for the assassination, for the poisoning of Sergei Skripal in the United Kingdom a few years before. So, examples are already there. Russia is already committing terrorist attacks, of course, denying everything, but capable intelligence services, capable authorities know that Russia is behind it. And of course, unfortunately, as I said at the beginning, the amount, the scale, and the severity of those terrorist attacks are increasing. For example, the cargo planes that exploded, again, we have irrefutable evidence. It happened in Poland and Germany. It was coordinated. We have evidence that it was the Russian intelligence services responsible for it. Now imagine what would have happened if the planes exploded midair. Fortunately for all of us, they, quote unquote, only exploded while being docked in the hangars. But we don't have to speculate what would have happened if they exploded while on flight.
Ján Michalčák was our guest today here on TVP World. Thank you very much for joining us and for sharing your insight.
It was a pleasure as always. Thank you.
And I'm Jan Michalčák. You're watching TVP World. Stay with us for more latest news, updates and commentary.